Hey, Dropping Knowledge, it's Tony, and today, and I'm sorry for the way I'm dressed, today is a chore day for me, and this is what I call my soap making shirt. So today we're going to make two different soaps that I need. Of course, I make them, as you know, if you're in the groups, I do a lot of do-it-yourself, homemade body washes, dish soaps, all kinds of things. Well, of course, I make bar soap. Now, this is actually how I started and got started into essential oils way back when, 4 years ago or so, when we became empty nesters. I thought I needed a hobby. So I started to research how to make soap. And quite frankly, it took me about a year to try and fail to create soap that actually didn't melt in the shower, that was nice to smell, moisturizing, and I've, over the last 4 years, got 3 or 4 different recipes to determine what type of soap I want to make. So I can make a soap that has a little bit more sudsiness to it, or not so sudsy, but a very hard bar of soap. Well, today we're going to make 2 very hard bars of soap. And if you bear with me a second, I'm trying to watch my phone and get ready. I've gotten all of my stuff out, and we're going to take a little bit of a field trip just so you can see the different stuff that goes into the soap. But bear with me one sec. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we are going to make Citrus Passion, which is a combination of the different butters that we'll show you in a little bit, and grapefruit, sweet orange, and bergamot. So those are the 3 oils that go into this soap. And we're also going to make a second batch, and this is one of the favorites on my Etsy shop. It's called Pure Bliss. It has going blank, geranium, peppermint, and lavender in it. So both fantastic soaps. My husband and I haven't bought barred soap now in 3 years. He went through the process of trial and error with me, so we used a few different types of, many different recipes until I found the right reaction for the soap. Because this is from scratch, so we use all the raw butters. We use lye, and there's a thing called saponification when making soap, and that is a reaction that the lye with the butters, once it's in its semi-solid form, creates to make the bars, make the soap or the brick hard. So let's take a little bit of a field trip, and I will show you what we're going to use today. First, we're going to use, you know me, I use all my different containers, so I have multiple containers to use to mix if I'm adding color to the soap or measuring my soaps or my butters. You need a scale. Just a simple kitchen scale is fantastic. I use one that has tare weight on it so that I can put the container on top of it, click the tare weight, it goes to 0, and then I can add the ingredient to the exact measurement without taking into consideration the weight of the container. You need a crock pot, and my crock pot right now is set to low. I'm going to go ahead and click it on high because I want my butters to melt and not keep us all here all night. So it is turned on to high, and let's disconnect you for a second and show you other areas of what I have in stock. Oh, here we go. So bear with me. So this looks like a bit of an episode of, whoops, I gotta learn not to do that. This is an episode of Breaking Bad. We have coconut oil, which I buy from Essentials Depot. This lasts me about a year. We have palm oil, again, I buy from Essentials Depot, lasts me about a year. Coming around this side, we have different colors that I add. Here's a mica that's a lavender from Brambleberry. And I found when I started making lavender soaps or anything that had lavender in it, and when I'm trying to sell it, if it doesn't have some purple in it, people don't quite believe that it's lavender. So I go ahead and add a little bit of purple mica to it to add the color, which I showed you a moment ago. If you look at the back of the soap, you'll see the colors. So I don't make the whole bar that color. I kind of like a cake where you just add a little bit of coloring and then you mix it through, but not all the way through, and you add some really cool designs and stuff to it. So that is what the mica is for. And then behind that is a food grade lye that you have to use in these recipes. This you need to be careful of. It is a poison, so keep it away from the kiddos. I generally don't have kids in my kitchen when I am making soap, unless they're older. And we need to be careful. You'll see I have my glasses on, so just in case anything were to, when I'm using the immersion blender, excuse me, come up into my, you obviously don't want to get it into my eyes. So we have olive oil. Now I bought this from, I want to say it was Essentials Depot, I'm not 100% sure. But I also get this at Publix. So when they get buy one, get one frees, yeah, I'm all over their olive oils. And then we have distilled water or purified water. I found it's the same thing when I'm reading in my recipes. And I've already pre-measured my oils because they're mixed. They're just going to sit and wait for me to pour in. You really don't have a lot of time from the time you add the lye to the butter mixture, and then you use the immersion blender to mix in your, if you're going to mix color or you're going to put in, you're going to put your oils in, etc. So I pre-measure all of that particular stuff, but we're going to go through the measuring process of everything else today. So here's my, as my husband says, Breaking Bad episode going on. And he threatens me if I ever start getting this stuff in 55-gallon drums delivered to my house, we're going to have an issue. So let's walk over to this side of the kitchen. This is my cooktop, so you'll see me put the lye into, you're going to add the lye to the water, never the water to the lye, and you'll see me do it on the cooktop so I can turn on the exhaust, or do it outside, because there is an exhaust that comes off of it. You don't want to breathe it in, and you certainly don't want it in your house. Going back on this side, we will see these are two containers that I purchased, or molds that I purchased. Essentials Depot, again, they're fantastic for soaping type stuff. This I like because you can see it's a silicone mold, so I can use it with or without the grating on it. And if I want to make more of them, or if I ever get to the point where I'm making a lot more soap than I am now, you can actually stack these. So these will stack on top of each other while they're cooling, because they have to sit once you make them. Usually about 24 hours, 48 hours is best before you take them out of the mold. And it comes out in a nice brick, which I think you can see on my Facebook page. And once, about 48 hours later, you can actually cut the soap. And I have a cutter for the soap. Let's take you over here and I can show you that. So again, I think I got this on Amazon, and it was from China. It was cheap, but it adds a nice, excuse me, shape to the soap. Nice designs on the soap when you're cutting it. And I'll put that away because we're not going to use that today. I have an immersion blender. It's just plugged in and waiting for me to use. My gloves, my pink gloves, so when I'm fooling with lye, not so much when I'm mixing it because it doesn't tend to splatter then, but when you're using the immersion blender, I wear my pink gloves. An old crock pot, I got a couple of these, so if I'm making multiple batches of soap, I can do that. And then the scale, as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And keep an eye out on Dropping Knowledge, by the way. If you haven't been on today, Erin has put out some fantastic promos and flash sales. So ladies have gotten together and put together some promos. There you go. There's some really good free gifts for buying kits. So keep an eye, look out there, take a look for it. And if you're one of the people that are just trying to decide if you're going to buy a kit, today would be a fantastic day because there's some great free gifts to be given away for that. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I walk off of the camera. I just can't move it everywhere with me. So I'm going to be measuring up the first batch. And if anybody would like the recipes for this, as again, I've painstakingly figured out how to make a hard bar of soap that doesn't melt in the shower. I've also have recipe to add a bit more bubbles if you want, if you're making them for kids. Like for my grandchildren, I usually add a little bit of castor oil to them. But once you start changing up the recipes that I gave you, you change up the reaction and the amount of lye that you're going to need. So there's actually a calculator that helps you figure out if I'm putting in which types of oil, because each of them have a different saponification level, which type of oil versus how much lye has to be put in for the soap to turn up properly. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And the first one we are going to make will be Pure Bliss. So we are going to start with 11.3 ounces of coconut oil. Okay. And coconut oil. This looks just like the coconut oil you buy at the store. If you buy the unrefined for cooking, etc. It just I use so much of it that I buy it in bigger containers. It's more economical. And we're weighing out 11.3 ounces of coconut oil. Also with soaping, you're going to find that I'm not a baker by nature, and the reason I'm not a baker is because I'm not a very good measurer. Throw a little bit of this and a little bit of that, right? That comes from the Italian cooking that I was brought up to do. When it comes to soaping, yeah, you got to be pretty much spot on when you're measuring. Going to add our coconut oil. And if you don't happen to have old crock pots, they're great. You can find them at garage sales. I got one of mine at Salvation Army up by where I work. And they're generally relatively, $4 or $5 at a garage sale. You can get them for $1. We're going to put in 1.4 ounces of palm oil. Let's try that one more time. Okay, getting close. Again, be very careful in your measuring with your butters, because it does affect the amount of lye that has to go in, and too much lye is a problem and not enough lye is a problem. Okay. I'm going to add the palm butter. And this melts up pretty quickly, by the way. And we're going to add 1.3 ounces of olive oil. Oh, excuse me, 11.3 ounces of olive oil. There we go, and we're going to let that melt. Keeping in mind with the quantities that I'm in the recipe that I'm giving out, it makes, each one of the recipes makes 1 brick of soap, and each brick is 11 bars of soap. So if you make, if you want to make smaller, if you have smaller molds, or you have the individual molds, I do have some individual molds. I tend to still make the same recipe, and then I just make a bunch of little, whether I'm making seashells or different shaped stars for the grandbabies. I still tend to stick to the same recipe. If you want to make individual bars of soap, we'll have to figure out, take it down to the bar size and calculate the lye. So we're going to let this sit on high, making sure it's still on. Okay. That pot seems to have shut itself off, so bear with me a second. I'll be right back. Okay, they seem to be warming. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way for the time being, and we're going to start the lye. Okay. Same thing with the lye. It's going to be measured the same way using a tare weight on the scale. We're going to start with the water, and for this particular recipe we need 12.38 ounces of distilled or purified water. So we're going to start with a measuring cup, and when you're mixing lye and water, you don't want to do it, I don't do it in plastic. I do it in glass. So I just went to, again, Goodwill and bought an old Pyrex measuring cup, and that's what I use for doing this. And we're going to add, again, 12.38 ounces of water. .4 is close enough. the side. Actually, we're going to take this now, we're going to put it over on the stove. Obviously no heat, I'm just using it for the exhaust. And turn on the exhaust. And with the lye, we are going to add 5.3 ounces of lye. If you give me a sec, I'm just going to invite a few people. Okay. Again, 5.38 ounces of lye. Just double checking, it's 5.31 ounces of lye. And the food grade lye that I purchase, it has a consistency of salt. Why am I having such a tough time with this? 5.31. Okay. Put our lye away over here. And now we're going to mix it onto the stove. So I'm going to try to turn this so that you can see the stove. So I'm not real good at holding the phone and doing what I'm doing at the same time. So you'll see we have the lye. We measured the lye. We have the water on the stove. And we're going to add the lye to the water. And I don't know if you can see that or not. Grab the phone and bring it over. So that's what it looks like on the stove. See how it's a white color right now. I use a metal spoon and I stir it well. It tends to like to get a little hard on the bottom, so you want to kind of scrape at that to loosen it from the bottom. And then you're going to let this sit. So if you were to measure this in temperature, and I've done this because the lye and the soap have to be pretty close to the same temperature. So I've done just a bit of experimenting on how long it should sit, etc. before we add it to the soap. But really, general rule of thumb is when that goes clear, it's pretty much ready to be added to the soap. So you'll see right now it's white. We'll come back in a few minutes and it'll be relatively clear. So So if you happen to get some of this on you, rinse it off relatively quickly. It doesn't bother me. If you get it on you and it starts to feel like it's burning a little bit, because it is an acid, I just put a little bit of milk on it. And always wear my glasses, because you never want it in your eyes. Okay. This is why I don't pick up the phone, because as soon as I pick up the phone, I always want to put it sideways. So we got a little bit of a sideways shot there. Okay, so we're back. We're waiting on our oil at this point. This might take a few minutes just because the oil has to melt. The butters have to melt together. And once they have melted, then we will get ready to start to add the lye to it. And that's about the process at this point. So bear with me. Again, don't forget to take a look in Dropping Knowledge. There is some excellent promos in it today. As I mentioned, the ladies have gotten together and put together some free gifts and gifts with purchase. So buying a diffuser starter kit, and then you can pick your promo that you want and get your free gifts. So generally it takes me about 45 minutes usually to make 2 bricks, because I make both of these at the same time. Well, not actually, let me correct that. I make 1 brick at a time, but while I'm pouring 1 brick, I'm starting the next brick and melting the butters and getting the lye ready and getting the lye started. So I'll show you what this looks like inside. So we're melting. We have a little bit left in there to melt. You'll see it's very liquefied. So the idea of this is once we add the lye, we will stir it and then use let it warm for a minute or 2, and then use an immersion blender and blend it. Once it has the consistency of, I would say, a runny mashed potato, I guess is the best way to describe it, and then you have not very long, probably about 5 minutes, to separate it out if you're going to add color to some of it, pour it into the mold, and get it in before it starts to set up. Okay. Go over and take a look at how our lye is doing. You see how it's getting clearer? You don't have to stir it again, but it still has a little bit inside of it, needs to continue. And if you feel it, it's quite warm. It's generally about 170 degrees, just the mixture of the water and the lye together. You need to give it a little bit of time to cool, which is what it's doing now. And doing its magic with the water before we add it to the coconut oil, olive oil, and palm oil mixture that's in the crock pot. That's for each soap. Put those 2 things together. Something called saponification will occur. It'll make a nice hard bar of soap. It smells wonderful. It's moisturizing. Again, I've played with the different mixtures of oils to come up with something that is, for this particular batch of soap, moisturizing, sudsy. I make a few different ones. I make one that's called Simple Facial Bar. That has very little suds to it and a lot of moisturization to it. So it takes your makeup off without stripping the oils out of your face. And then again, you got to change, the recipe changes a little bit when you do those soaps. But when I get ready to make those soaps, I'll go live again and we'll talk about those. So let's go over and take a look at how our butters are doing. Not bad. We're getting there. One of the things I really love about making soap is my house smells amazing because I'm using the oils in the soap. So it's just, that's good stuff. Okay, put you back on the cradle. And I am going to start to get ready. I no longer need the scale, so I'm going to move this out of my way for the time being. I'm going to mix the, about 2 minutes, I'm going to mix the lye in with the butters, and we're going to start using the immersion blender. So now the pink gloves will go on. When I get done, and I'll show you this too, I'll go live when I actually cut the brick, and you'll see how it's got the design of the cutter that I showed you a moment ago, and this particular one has some color in it. So we are going to add color to this particular batch, and you'll see how it's actually made. I'm staring at a pot, trying to make it melt a little bit quicker, but it is what it is, guys. So now it is melted, so I'm going to turn this down to low because I want to reduce the heat and let the mixture start to cool a little bit, because we're going to add the lye to it. Be right back. Getting our immersion blender ready. Because it does, like I mentioned, it is a little bit of a time thing. There we go. So trying to keep it all moving so nothing gets too hard for me before I can actually add my color. We're going to use this container. When I poured the mixture out of here into the mold, I'm going to pour a portion of that mixture into this container. I'll add a little bit of the purple that you saw me earlier, so that will make that portion of the mixture purple, and then I'll just kind of string it through the soap. I use one of these guys, which are just a wooden skewer, to just kind of make circles excuse me, in the mold itself to create the design that you saw on the soap that I showed you earlier. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to mix the lye into the mixture. My pink gloves with my pink shirt. And you'll see excuse me, the lye is pretty much clear at this point. It's ready to go. Carefully add it to our mixture. Again, we don't want to splash. Stir that so it's mixed in with the mixture. Show you what it looks like. Now, before we use the immersion blender on it, pretty much the same as I did before, and you can feel and see it's starting to thicken up just a little bit. The immersion blender will definitely cause it to thicken up. Okay, you can see all this. Put our gloves back on. Take your immersion blender. When you put your immersion blender in, it's going to have air underneath it, so you want to tap it out and tap it a few times, because if you leave the immersion blender in with the air, it will add air bubbles to your soap, and you really don't want air bubbles in your soap. So, I'm going to try to show you this at the same time, so bear with me. Okay. Right? And they call it tracing. So when you can lift this out, and it actually creates a little bit of a ring that's what they call tracing. So that tells you that your soap, that your soap is ready. See how it's getting thicker and it's actually sticking to the immersion blender versus just being a liquid? Okay, we are there. So I'm going to put the phone down for a moment, guys, or switch it back over. Slide this out of the way. Get two things ready. We're going to put, see if I can push this back a little farther, here you can see. The soap in here that we're going to add the color to, and we're going to get our color ready. But you can see it. Again, I get it from Brambleberry. It's just a mica. It's makeup grade. Just add it to the soap. add some soap to this, about 25% of it. You can see how thick it is when I'm pouring it. I'm going to set that aside for a moment. And then we're going to add the rest of the soap to the silicone mold. Put that baby back in there. Turn it to low, because I'm going to start a new batch in a minute. Spread this out. And I'm going to add my essential oil at this point. So I believe I said we were going to make the Pure Bliss. So I am going to be adding half an ounce of geranium, half an ounce of lavender, and a half an ounce of peppermint. Remember, this is making 11 bars of soap. And you'll notice I took it off of the heat before I added the essential oil to it, because we really don't want to heat our essential oils. And also I find that if I leave it on heat, even if on low heat, my soap will come out less fragrant. Some of that oil is burning off, and I just don't want that to happen. This is what it looks like. You see, it's like I mentioned, a runny mashed potato. Still working nice though, it's not setting up too quickly on me, which is nice. And now we're going to add the color to the little portion that we took out, and we're going to mix it into here. So I have this little part right here that I had taken out, about 25% of the batch. We're going to add a tablespoon or a teaspoon of the colorant, see how it does. And you don't necessarily have to add this, by the way. I add it because my Etsy customers don't seem to recognize lavender soap if it doesn't have a little bit of purple in it. So, if I'm making for myself at home, I don't use the purple. So if you can see that, it's coming out a really nice purple. Nothing too strong. It's like a cake batter, really. And then you're going to pour it on the top. And I'm going to try to do this so I can show you at the same time. So, pouring it across the top, just like you would if you were adding a chocolate layer into a vanilla cake or bundt cake. setting phone down just for a second. Okay, so now it's all been added. Now I like to leave a layer of the purple on top. So the soap almost looks like it has a bit of a frosting to it when it's complete. And you'll see how pliable it still is. And then to add a little bit of design, just simply take your wooden skewer, turn it, and I can start to feel the white soap underneath. It is starting to set up, so it's starting to get a little hard, a little harder if it's not as pliable as the part I just added, which is a good thing. Should be doing that. And that will add like purple streaks throughout the soap while leaving a layer on the top that looks like frosting. So that is pure bliss. So my next little tidbit that I learned the hard way making soap is you need to have a bottle of regular alcohol that you'd keep, or you could use vodka if you want to. I drink vodka, so I just use regular alcohol, just a spray bottle. So if you bear with me 1 second, I'll grab that. Two-ounce bottle is pure alcohol, no water mixed into it. Just spritz the top of it. I do this to make sure any of those air bubbles, if there are any in there, they come out at this point because we don't want them in the mixture. And ta-da! She's ready to go. So I'll make sure when I take her out of the mold, I call it her because she's beautiful. And if you read my story on my Facebook page or my Peaceful Living page, the reason I love making soap is because every time you cut the brick is like Christmas. It smells wonderful, and the different designs that I've created through it, some completely by mistake, learning along the way. It's just, for me, it's one of those moments where it's just pretty, you know. So in a few days I'll go live again for when I take her out of the silicone mold, and then we'll cut her so you can see what she looks like when she's cut. And at that point I will also have the citrus passion made as well. I'm not going to keep you while I make that. It's the same exact recipe. The only thing is the oils are a little different. There's grapefruit, bergamot, and sweet orange are what you use in that. But as far as the recipe goes, again, I'll go over it real quick. 11.3 ounces of coconut oil, 11.3 ounces of olive oil, 11.4 ounces of palm oil, 5.31 ounces of lye, and 12.38 ounces of distilled water. A crock pot, an immersion blender, Again, you can buy those. I found a few of them at garage sales. I found them at the Salvation Army. I don't tend to use the immersion blend or any of the, like my crock pot, for instance, is only for soap making. I don't use that for. I have a crock pot that I use for cooking, but these are just older crock pots that I've picked up along the way that I use only for soap making, because there is lye in it. Until the saponification complete and it turns into a nice hard bar of soap, there is lye in it. So I don't tend to mix them. And this is what my kitchen looks like after we get done making soap. But anyways, I want to thank you for listening and watching. If you have any questions, make sure you can just put a note on Dropping Knowledge, and I'll answer anything you want to know about making soap. Don't forget to take a look at the promos that are out there today, and if you have any question about those, again, just speak out. There's plenty of people that'll help you. I appreciate your time again today. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you in a few days when we actually cut the soap. Have a good night.